Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and get you up to speed on some really compelling global stories. And today, we're diving into something maybe a bit unexpected. The trade situation between Canada and the United States. Yeah, normally you think of them as, super close partners, quiet cooperation mostly. But lately, it's been, quite a storm brewing there, really challenging that relationship. So our mission today is simple. Help you understand what's actually going on. We've gone through news reports, polls, expert takes to give you a clear picture, what's happening, why it matters, where things might go. Think of it as your shortcut to getting informed on this. Okay, so let's unpack the latest moves. August 1st, 2025. That's when the U.S. hiked tariffs again on Canadian goods, the ones not covered by CVSMA. They jumped from 25% up to 35%.
Yeah, and that's on top of what was already there. Don't forget, steel and aluminum were already facing 50% tariffs, and semi-finished copper got hit with 50% too. It's pretty steep.
Especially between these two neighbors. So how unprecedented is this really?
Oh, it's remarkable. And what's really striking, I think, is how the justifications from the U.S. keep changing. It's like a moving target. First, it was trade deficits, then maybe national security. And now we're hearing things like Canada not doing enough on fentanyl, or even linking it to Canada recognizing Palestinian statehood back in September.
Right, although President Trump did walk that Palestinian statehood reason back a bit later, saying it wasn't a, quote, deal breaker still.
Exactly. It makes negotiating incredibly tricky because it's not just one issue. Canada's kind of caught in this bigger U.S. trade strategy. I mean, these hikes aren't just aimed at Canada. Over 60 other countries, the EU, they're all facing new duties. Brazil's seeing rates up to 50% too.
That's a really important context. I read U.S. tariffs overall are at levels we haven't seen since, 1934?
Yeah, the average tax on imports is apparently around 18.3% now. It's a major shift.
So how has Canada officially responded to these, let's call them evolving justifications, especially the fentanyl claim?
Well, Prime Minister Mark Carney called the tariff hike disappointing. And they've pushed back hard on the fentanyl point. They emphasize Canada's only involved in about 1% of U.S. fentanyl imports. Plus, they've taken pretty significant steps, Appointed a specific fentanyl czar, put $1.3 billion into border security, even launched a joint strike force with the U.S. to tackle drug trafficking. So there's a real disconnect between the rhetoric and the actions.
Okay, well, this is where it gets, I think, really interesting. Beyond the official statements, how are regular Canadians reacting? Because reports suggest there's this strong, almost grassroots sense of national resolve building.
Absolutely. You're seeing this anything but American idea cropping up.
Yeah, people becoming, as one person put it, rabid label readers, making sure products are Canadian, or if not, from a, quote, trade-friendly country.
Rita Bailey, yeah. And she even mentioned finding it kind of good for her well-being, stepping outside that constant consumer culture.
Right. Good for the bank account and mental well-being, she said.
That groundswell is powerful. It shows a deeper national feeling, doesn't it? A sort of collective pushback.
Definitely. And it's not just shopping habits. Travel, too. We're hearing about people like Larry Sharp, Gino Paoloni, folks who used to go to the U.S. all the time, now saying they just won't cross the border. They don't want to support the U.S. economy right now.
And finding alternatives, right? Like that example of Karen Mount buying local produce or Mexican produce in winter instead of American.
Exactly. Though she did admit making one exception, smart wool socks. Apparently, they're just too good.
Huh. Well, you gotta have good socks.
But for others, it's serious. Like Gary Semple saying it might be a lifetime boycott for him, always checking for that Canadian label. It feels like for many, this boycott idea is a personal way to, stand for Canada.
It is, and you have to ask, how much does that grassroots feeling actually sway the government? Or does it just make their job harder when negotiating?
That's the question, isn't it?
Well, it definitely influences things and complicates them. Look at the polling from Angus Reid. Canadian resolve to play hardball, as they put it, has actually gone up. Almost 7 in 10 now want a hard line in talks. That's up from 63% just a bit earlier.
Wow, 7 in 10. And most, 63%, think Canada should stick with recognizing Palestinian statehood, even if it messes with trade talks.
Right. People seem dug in. And that same poll found 7 in 10 Canadians feel Trump is trying to make them suffer to gain leverage.
But there's a split on how to respond, right, on retaliatory tariffs.
Yeah, there is. A majority, 58%, say Canada should match the U.S. tariffs, even if it means more economic pain here or triggers even more U.S. retaliation.
That lines up with Ontario Premier Doug Ford's comment about hitting back as hard as we possibly can, maybe matching the 50% on metals.
But then you have others, like Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, calling for easing things, and Pierre Poilievre suggesting more targeted counter tariffs.
So leaders are kind of caught between that public desire for firmness and the economic realities.
Exactly that. It's a real tightrope walk. When public feeling is this strong, it's tough for any leader to look like they're backing down. It becomes about national dignity, not just dollars and cents.
So given all this, the public mood, the government trying to manage it, what's the strategy? Where does Canada go from here? Prime Minister Carney seems focused on, as he said, what we can control,
Yeah.
building up the domestic economy.
Right, like that $1.2 billion support package announced for the softwood lumber industry. That's significant.
Yeah, see $700 billion in loan guarantees, see $500 million for finding new products and markets, see $50 million for retraining workers.
It's not just a handout. It feels like a strategic pivot, trying to reduce that heavy reliance on the U.S. market, which, could reshape things long term, though actually doing it is another challenge.
And there's that Build Canadian initiative, too, using Canadian materials for federal construction, trying to boost domestic demand for lumber, speed up home building.
And Carney also warned that Canadian investment in the U.S. might drop if things don't improve. Canada's a huge investor down there, second largest globally, I believe.
Yeah. And even the provincial premiers are on board, apparently agreeing at a First Ministers meeting to diversify supply chains, boost domestic production.
It really does sound like Canada's digging in, preparing for a potentially long period of friction.
It feels like a comprehensive strategy for, resilience, making the economy less vulnerable to shifts south of the border.
Even with a partner as crucial as the U.S.
Okay, but what about the diplomacy? That seems just as tricky.
Oh, definitely. You've got Carney saying he's in no hurry to talk to Trump only when it makes sense. But then his trade minister, Dominic LeBlanc, expected a chat over the next number of days. So mixed signals, maybe, or strategic positioning.
And then U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick chimed in, suggesting Trump might reconsider if Carney starts turning on the charm and drops retaliation.
Yeah, the charm offensive. It highlights how unique this relationship is. That phrase, we don't sell things to each other as much as we build things together, especially in autos, that integration is deep.
And potentially a key lever for Canada.
Could be, because U.S. automakers, GM, Ford, Stellantis, they're now saying publicly that these 50% metal tariffs are hurting their bottom line.
So the pressure isn't just one way.
Exactly. Plus, the wider U.S. economy is showing some strain. Weak jobs report, rising inflation.
So how does Canada play this, especially with those ongoing legal challenges in U.S. courts against Trump's use of the IEPA, the Emergency Powers Act?
That's a fascinating layer. Those court cases challenge the president's authority to impose these kinds of tariffs. If successful, they could theoretically pull the rug out from under the whole thing. Huge uncertainty.
So Canada needs a strategy that works regardless of those court outcomes.
Precisely. It's that middleweight Canada using smarts and strategy against the super heavyweight U.S., especially when U.S. industries themselves are feeling the pain. Direct confrontation is risky.
Okay, let's shift to a possible solution then. We know tariffs are blunt. They mostly help the U.S. Treasury, not producers on either side. So what about this idea of tariff rate quotas, or TRQs? How do they work?
Okay, TRQs. Think of them as a two-tiered system. Up to a certain amount, a quota, goods can cross the border tariff-free, or at a very low rate. It's only after you hit that quota, that ceiling, that the higher tariff kicks in.
So it offers some predictability.
Exactly. Stability. Exporters know they can sell a certain amount without the massive tariff, maybe even get better prices for that quota amount. It protects domestic industries too, but in a more managed way than just slapping on a huge tariff from $1.
Okay, sounds more nuanced. But why would President Trump, with his tough-on-trade stance, actually agree to something like TRQs?
Well, potentially it addresses the complaints from U.S. industries, like those automakers worried about input costs from the metal tariffs. TRQs could protect U.S. producers without causing quite the same disruption to supply chains. So it lets Trump look tough, keep leverage, stay flexible, but maybe avoids immediate Canadian retaliation and some of the worst economic blowback in the U.S. It could play into his noted fear of loss, maybe. Frame it as preventing a bigger problem.
Framing it as avoiding loss, not giving concessions. Clever. Is there a precedent for using TRQs like this between the U.S. and Canada?
Oh, yeah. They're already part of CUSMA in agriculture, for example. And remember those side letters on autos in the Section 232 tariffs? Those involved quota-like ideas, too.
Right, the national security tariff.
And they were used in the US-UK deal, too. So the idea is apply this model to steel, aluminum, softwood lumber, maybe set bidirectional quotas for autos at current levels, no punitive tariffs on parts, protect that integrated industry.
And Canada's leverage here would be
The growing noise from those U.S. automakers. Their complaints about the 50% metal tariffs hitting profits. That's a key pressure point.
could that be enough to push the U.S. towards TRQs, maybe even lower the 50% rate within that system?
It's certainly Canada's best shot. And interestingly, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent himself mentioned being open to targeted tariffs relief through volume-based arrangements.
Which sounds a lot like TRQs.
Pretty much, yeah. It's
Yeah.
an opening. Now, some experts did say Canada's timing on the Palestinian statehood recognition might have been ill-timed.
Adding an unrelated irritant, as one put it.
Potentially. Just shows how different political moves can unexpectedly tangle up trade talks.
So quite the complex picture. We've looked at the tariffs, the pushback, the strong Canadian resolve from citizens right up to government policy, and this potential path forward with tariff rate quotas as a more, perhaps, stable solution.
A very complex dance indeed.
And it really makes you think, doesn't it? This whole dispute plays out with huge industries, international diplomacy, but it drills right down into everyday life. What you pick up at the grocery store, where you decide to go on vacation,
Yeah.
these big economic decisions have these subtle personal ripples.
Yeah, and how global politics, like recognizing a state, can indirectly echo through trade talks and maybe even, impact funding for something totally unrelated back home.
It really highlights just how interconnected everything is. Definitely something to keep watching.